Now let's talk about prioritizing requirements and design. So we get requirements from all of our different stakeholders. In fact, we even get requirements from the government. We get requirements from regulatory policies, right? However, we have to prioritize these requirements. We can't just take in everything that we're given. We need to be able to ask the right questions. And so we're going to look at how do we prioritize our requirements. That is why we have business analysts in there, because when requirements come, someone needs to look at everything and say, no, we're not going to do this. Yes, we would use this. We're going to look at the technique called the must call technique. The must call technique is a technique that is used by business analysts to prioritize requirements. So it's a very popular prioritization requirements to prioritization technique rather, to manage your requirements. So the acronym for must call really represents 4 categories: the must have, the should have, the could have, and the won't have or will not have right now. So when we're looking at our requirements, we need to prioritize them based off of these 4 criteria. So what are the must-haves? The must-haves are non-negotiables, right? They are the things that must be in the solution. They are basically our minimum viable product, the things that would help that solution to work, regardless of every other feature. Those are the things that we must have in place. We are unable to deliver the product without having those features. We can't even have a legal product without having this. So it must be, legal with it. Also, it must be, something that without that feature, the project is not viable. In fact, it's probably unsafe. Not if we don't have it, that product is now unsafe. So those are some things we think about when we are prioritizing our requirements. Okay, and then we have our should haves. They are important but not vital to the solution or the business. It may be painful to leave out of the solution, but it's still viable, and we might need some kind of workaround to make it happen. So they're important, but they're not vital. We have the could haves as well. They are desirable, but not as important as the should haves, right? So we could have it, but not so important. We can really do without it. And if there's extra time, there's extra budget, we can do it, or we can, look into it in the future. And then we have the won't haves requirements. That is, we won't have this requirement at all. We don't have the budget for it. We don't have the time for it. We don't have the capacity for it. We don't even have the skill set for it. It's a nice to have, but it has no real impact to the value. It has no real impact to the value. So as business analysts, when we're prioritizing our requirements, we use the must call to see what are the must haves, the should haves, the could haves, and the won't haves. If I am creating a banking app, for example, if I ask Spencer or Bukola or Joshua or Nike, right? If I ask them, what are the features that make sense to you in your banking app, you would all tell me different things. However, we as the business analysts, we know what are the basic things that we need to have in a banking app. There are so many features in our banking applications today that we would never use. I would never use them because they're not of importance to me. Right? Same thing with each and every one of us, but there are features that we would always use. Must have, for example, we need to log into the banking system. We need to be able to view our account balance. We need to be able to transfer funds, right? We need to be able to pay bills. Those are some must haves. Some should haves could be there, like we could be able to, use our banking app to do some other functionalities that might not be so important. For example, maybe paying taxes. I might not need to use the banking app to pay taxes, maybe because my taxes are already taken care of, when I receive my payroll. So I don't really pay any personal tax. So maybe that's just a should have. Maybe for some people who might need it, not important in a banking app, because also the tax authorities also have their own website. So even having that feature of paying taxes on an app, maybe should have, not very important. It could have, not desirable at all, not as important as it should be. We don't, if there's budget for it, fine. If not, that's okay. For example, maybe within the could haves, it could be anything. It could be, for example, within my own, banking app, there are some features that I don't use. They don't really matter to me at all. They don't matter to me at all. For example, within my banking app, there is a feature to, have access to, maybe, for example, maybe pay tithes. or pay offerings or things like that. But what if maybe my church is not linked to that bank account? Maybe I rather just pay my offerings and tithes in the church or in the mosque. So I don't really need this. I could have. I mean, it's not important really for a banking app, right? So won't have, there's some things that we just wouldn't have on a banking platform. Like we wouldn't put access to your social media on your banking platform. We wouldn't put, there's some things that just wouldn't be there. We wouldn't allow, someone else to have access to your banking platform. There needs to be some level of privacy in terms of access to banking platforms and things like that. So must-haves, maybe the privacy. We want to ensure that maybe there's a PIN, there's a password, there's probably a token and things like that. So we're thinking about creating solutions, and it cuts across, even just beyond banking apps. It could even be process related. We want to think about the things that the must, the should, the could have, the won't have. The must-have techniques helps us as business analysts to prioritize our requirements. So we're going to think of the time you work on a requirement or a design, or think about the features in the solution you currently use, right? And categorize them using the Morse code technique. So we have a 3-minute exercise right now, and you're going to actually do that. So let me see. And as business analysts, when you use the Morse code technique, we're able to actually look at all the requirements that we receive. And based off of this prioritization, we know that we would only advise the business on the must and the should haves. The could and the won't haves, we would put them at the bottom of the list, and we would only recommend the must haves and the should haves, okay?